The stagecoach rattled into Ouray, Colorado on a bitter February morning in 1882, carrying a woman who had learned the hard way that promises meant nothing and men even less. Violet Preston pressed her gloved hand against the frosted window, watching the mining town emerge from the mountain mist like something from a half-remembered dream, all wooden storefronts and muddy streets flanked by peaks that scraped the sky. She had come here with everything she owned in 2 carpet bags and a heart that had been shattered so thoroughly, she wondered if the pieces would ever fit back together again. The driver's shout broke through her thoughts as the coach lurched to a stop outside the Grand Hotel. Violet gathered her belongings, stepping down onto the wooden platform with legs that trembled from more than just the long journey. The mountain air bit through her traveling coat, sharp and clean in a way that St. Louis air had never been. She stood there for a moment, breathing it in, telling herself this was a new beginning, that the past could stay buried 2 states away. "Need help with those bags, miss?" The voice came from behind her, low and steady. Violet turned to find a man in his mid-20s watching her with eyes the color of creek water in summer. He wore worn denim and a sheepskin coat, a wide-brimmed hat shadowing features that were handsome in that weathered way of men who spent their lives outdoors. Something in his gaze made her grip her bags tighter. "I can manage," she said, her voice coming out sharper than she intended. He held up his hands in a gesture of peace, taking a step back. "Did not mean to overstep. Just seemed like those bags were heavy is all. I appreciate the offer, but I am perfectly capable." Violet lifted her chin, maintaining the wall she had built around herself over the past 6 months. She had learned that lesson too well. Accept help, accept kindness, and before you knew it, you were dependent, vulnerable, exposed to the kind of pain that left scars on your soul. The man nodded slowly, something unreadable flickering across his face. "Fair enough. Welcome to Ouray, miss." He touched the brim of his hat and turned away, his boots echoing on the wooden walkway as he disappeared into the morning crowd. Violet watched him go, feeling an odd pang of something she could not quite name. She shook it off and made her way into the hotel, where a portly man with mutton chops greeted her with professional enthusiasm. "Miss Preston, we have been expecting you. Mrs. Hartford sent word you would be arriving today." He consulted a leather-bound register. "You are here about the teaching position, correct?" "Yes, that is right." Violet set her bags down, grateful for the warmth radiating from the pot-bellied stove in the corner. "Mrs. Hartford said the school had been without a teacher since October." "That is correct. Previous teacher Miss Reynolds got married and moved to Denver. The children have been making do with lessons from whoever could spare the time, but it is not the same as having a proper school teacher." He handed her a brass key. "Room 12, top of the stairs, and to the left. Mrs. Hartford asked if you could call on her at 2 o'clock this afternoon. Her house is the white one, with the wraparound porch on 5th Street." Violet took the key, exhaustion settling into her bones. "Thank you. I will be there." The room was small but clean, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a window that overlooked the main street. Violet unpacked her belongings with mechanical precision, hanging her 3 dresses in the wardrobe and arranging her books on the small table. She had brought her favorites, the ones that had sustained her through the darkest months: Shakespeare, Austen, Whitman, words that reminded her that beauty existed even when the world seemed determined to crush it out of you. She washed her face in the basin, changed into a fresh dress, and tried to ignore the hollow feeling in her chest. This was what she wanted: a new life, a purpose, independence. She did not need anything else. She certainly did not need to trust anyone. Mrs. Hartford turned out to be a woman in her 50s with intelligent eyes and a no-nonsense manner that Violet appreciated immediately. They sat in her parlor, surrounded by lace doilies and daguerreotypes of stern-looking relatives, discussing curriculum and expectations over tea and ginger cookies. "The children range from 6 to 14, Mrs. Hartford explained. About 20 in total, though attendance can be spotty during calving season or when the mines need extra hands. You will have your work cut out for you, Miss Preston. Some of these children have barely had a month of proper schooling in their lives." "I am up for the challenge," Violet assured her. "Education is the foundation of everything else. These children deserve that foundation." Mrs. Hartford smiled approvingly. "I can see why your references spoke so highly of you. The previous superintendent in St. Louis said you were one of the finest teachers he had ever employed. May I ask why you chose to leave?" Violet had prepared for this question, had practiced her answer until it sounded natural. I wanted a change of scenery, a fresh start. The city was becoming suffocating. It was not entirely a lie. St. Louis had become suffocating, though not in the way Mrs. Hartford would assume. It had become impossible to walk down familiar streets without seeing Matthew's face in every crowd, without remembering how his promises had turned to ash, how his tender words had concealed a nature that was anything but tender, how she had given him her trust, her heart, nearly her virtue, only to discover he already had a wife and 2 children in Illinois. "Well, we are glad to have you," Mrs. Hartford said warmly. "The school is just off Main Street. I will take you there tomorrow morning and introduce you to some of the parents. You will start on Monday. That gives you the weekend to settle in and prepare your lessons." Violet spent the next 2 days exploring Ouray, learning the rhythms of this mountain town that would be her home. The town sat in a box canyon, surrounded by peaks that caught the afternoon light and turned it golden. Hot springs bubbled up from the earth, creating misty pools that the locals swore had healing properties. The main street bustled with miners, ranchers, merchants, and the occasional gentleman in a suit who looked distinctly out of place among the work-worn faces. She bought supplies at the general store, nodding politely to the other customers, but keeping her distance. She ate her meals alone at the hotel restaurant, deflecting the friendly overtures of the waitress who clearly wanted to know everything about the new school teacher. She walked past the saloons and the assay office, the church with its whitewashed steeple, the blacksmith shop where the clang of hammer on metal rang out like a heartbeat. And twice, she saw the man from her first morning. Once, he was loading supplies into a wagon outside the general store, his movements efficient and practiced. The second time, he was talking to an older man near the livery stable, his head thrown back in laughter at something his companion had said. Both times, his gaze found hers across the distance, and both times, Violet looked away first. Monday morning arrived with fresh snow dusting the peaks. Violet dressed carefully in her most professional attire, a navy dress with a high collar and sensible boots. She pinned her dark hair into a neat bun, studying her reflection in the small mirror. At 23, she looked older than her years. Good. She needed the children to take her seriously. The schoolhouse was a single room with a wood stove, rows of benches, and a slate board at the front. Someone had already started a fire, and the room was pleasantly warm. Violet was arranging primers on the desk when she heard the door open behind her. "Miss Preston?" She turned to find a boy of about 12 standing in the doorway, hat in hand. "Yes? Ma sent me to help with anything you might need. I am Timothy Walsh. I have been coming to school since I was 6, except when Pa needed me at the ranch." "Thank you, Timothy. That is very kind." Violet smiled at him, the first genuine smile she had managed in days. "You can help me organize these books by reading level." Other children began arriving in clusters. Some came alone, others with siblings. They ranged from tiny to nearly grown, all of them watching her with varying degrees of curiosity and suspicion. Violet understood. She was an outsider, a stranger. She would have to earn their respect. By 9 o'clock, she had 18 students seated on the benches. She stood before them, hands clasped, and introduced herself. "Good morning. I am Miss Preston, your new teacher. I know you have been without consistent instruction for several months, so we are going to start with an assessment. I need to understand where each of you stands so I can help you grow. We will begin with reading." The morning passed in a blur of recitations and slate work. Some of the children could barely read at all, stumbling over simple words. Others, like Timothy, were surprisingly advanced. Violet made notes, already planning how she would group them for different lessons. At noon, she dismissed them for lunch. Most of the children scattered to their homes or pulled out cloth-wrapped parcels. Violet was about to eat the sandwich she had brought when the door opened again. The man from her first morning stood in the doorway, and this time, he was not alone. A girl of about 8 held his hand, looking up at Violet with enormous brown eyes. "Miss Preston," he said, his voice carrying that same steady quality. "I hope I am not interrupting. This is my sister, Daisy. She has been staying with me since our folks passed, and I wanted to make sure she got enrolled proper." Violet blinked, reassessing everything. Sister, not daughter. "Of course. Please come in." He guided the little girl forward, and Violet could see the family resemblance now. They had the same coloring, the same shaped eyes. Daisy wore a calico dress that had been carefully mended, her hair braided with obvious care. "Daisy, this is Miss Preston. She is going to be your teacher." "Hello, Miss Preston," Daisy whispered. "Hello, Daisy. How old are you?" 8. I can read some. Vance has been teaching me." Violet's gaze flicked to the man. Vance. Now she had a name to put with the face. "That is wonderful. It is never too early to start learning." "She is a good student," Vance said, his hand resting protectively on his sister's shoulder. "Picks things up quick. I do my best, but I never got much schooling myself. She deserves better than what I can give her." There was no self-pity in his voice, just simple fact. Something about his honesty caught Violet off guard. "I am sure you have done very well," she found herself saying. "But yes, regular school will help. Daisy can start this afternoon if she would like." Daisy looked up at her brother, who nodded encouragingly. "Go on then. I will be back to walk you home when school lets out." After he left, Violet found herself watching the door longer than necessary. She shook her head, annoyed with herself. She had not come to Ouray to get distracted by broad shoulders and kind eyes. She had come to teach, to build a life that depended on no one but herself. The afternoon session went smoothly. Daisy proved to be as quick as her brother had claimed, fitting in easily with the other children. When the clock struck 3, Violet dismissed her students and began tidying up for the next day. She was erasing the slate board when she heard a commotion outside. Through the window, she could see 2 boys shoving each other near the school steps. One was Timothy Walsh. The other was a larger boy she recognized as Jack Morrison, son of one of the mine foremen. Their voices rose, angry and sharp. Violet hurried outside. "Boys, stop this immediately!" Jack had Timothy by the collar now, his fist drawn back. "Take it back!" "I will not. Everyone knows your pa cheats the miners on their pay." The punch connected before Violet could intervene, sending Timothy sprawling. She grabbed Jack's arm as he moved in for another hit. "Enough! Both of you, stop this instant!" "He called my pa a thief!" Jack shouted, struggling against her grip. "And you just assaulted another student." Violet's voice cracked like a whip. "Timothy, get up. Both of you will stay after school tomorrow and write a 5-page essay on the importance of settling disagreements with words rather than fists." 5 pages? Jack looked horrified. "Would you prefer 10? Violet met his gaze steadily until he looked away. "No, madam." "Then I will see you both tomorrow, ready to discuss this like civilized people. Now, go home." She watched them leave in opposite directions, her heart still pounding. Violence solved nothing. She had learned that lesson too. Matthew had seemed so civilized, so refined, right up until the moment she had confronted him about the wife he had never mentioned. Then his mask had slipped, and she had seen the rage underneath. That was well handled. Violet jumped. Vance stood a few feet away, Daisy beside him. How long had they been there? "Thank you," she said stiffly, embarrassed to have been observed. "Just part of the job." Not every teacher would have stepped in like that. Jack is a big kid, and he has his Pay's temper. Vance's expression was approving. "You have got more courage than sense, maybe, but that is not a bad thing." I am not sure whether to take that as a compliment or an insult. The corner of his mouth quirked up. "Little bit of both, I suppose. Daisy, did you have a good first day?" The little girl nodded enthusiastically. "Miss Preston taught us about geography. Did you know that Colorado became a state only 6 years ago? And that Ouray is named after a real Ute chief?" "I did know that," Vance said, his eyes crinkling with affection. "What else did you learn?" As Daisy chattered about her day, Violet found herself studying Vance more closely. He listened to his sister with complete attention, asking questions that showed genuine interest. There was a gentleness to him that contrasted with his work-roughened hands and the gun holstered at his hip. Most men in Ouray carried weapons. It was that kind of town, that kind of time, but something about seeing it on him made her wonder what kind of life he led. "We should let Miss Preston get home," Vance said finally. "She has had a long day." "Yes, of course." Violet gathered herself. "Daisy, I will see you tomorrow." "Goodbye, Miss Preston." They walked away together, Daisy's small hand in her brother's larger one. Violet watched them go, that odd pang returning. She recognized it now for what it was, loneliness. But loneliness was safer than trust. She had to remember that. The weeks that followed fell into a rhythm. Violet taught her students, gradually earning their trust and respect. She organized spelling bees and geography contests. She stayed late to help the ones who struggled and brought in extra books for those who were ready for more advanced material. Teaching gave her purpose, reminded her that she had value beyond what any man might think of her. Vance brought Daisy to school each morning and picked her up each afternoon. Sometimes he would linger, asking how his sister was progressing, whether she needed any supplies he could provide. These conversations were always brief and polite, but Violet found herself looking forward to them in a way that alarmed her. One afternoon in early March, a spring storm rolled through the mountains without warning. Rain lashed the schoolhouse windows, driven by wind that howled through the canyon. Violet dismissed class early, not wanting the children to get caught in the worst of it. Most lived close enough to make it home quickly, but Daisy stood by the window, watching anxiously. "Vance is never late," she said, worry creasing her small face. "I am sure he is fine," Violet assured her, though she felt a flutter of concern herself. The storm probably just slowed him down. They waited. The other children left, calling goodbyes as they dashed into the rain. The schoolhouse grew dim, shadows gathering in the corners. Violet lit the oil lamps, trying to project a calm she did not quite feel. Finally, nearly an hour late, Vance appeared. He was soaked through, his hat dripping, his coat plastered to his frame. Relief flooded his face when he saw Daisy safe inside. "Sorry," he said, slightly breathless. "Horse threw a shoe on the way into town. Had to walk him to the smithy, then the storm hit." "It is fine," Violet said. "We have been keeping each other company." Vance looked at his sister. "You ready to brave this weather, little bit?" Daisy nodded, but she looked small and scared. The rain was coming down in sheets now, turning the street into a river of mud. "You should wait it out," Violet found herself saying. "At least until the worst passes. I was about to make tea." She had brought a small kettle and some tea leaves to keep at the school for the cold mornings. Now she filled the kettle with water from the bucket and set it on the stove. Vance hesitated, then nodded. "That is kind of you, if you are sure we are not imposing." "Not at all." They sat on the student benches, oddly formal, while the storm raged outside and the kettle heated. Daisy curled up against her brother's side, her earlier anxiety fading now that he was here. Violet poured tea into 3 tin cups when it was ready, the ritual giving her something to do with her hands. "How long have you been caring for Daisy?" she asked, surprising herself with the question. She usually avoided anything personal. Vance wrapped his hands around the cup, as if warming them. "Almost 2 years now. Our folks were headed to California, trying to find better opportunities. Their wagon train got caught in a flash flood in Nevada. They did not make it." His voice was matter of fact, but pain flickered in his eyes. "Daisy was with my aunt in Denver at the time, thank God. When word reached me, I went and got her. She is the only family I have got left." "I am sorry," Violet said softly. "That must have been difficult." "We manage." He glanced down at his sister, who was starting to drowse. "She is a tough little thing, takes after our ma that way. And you? Do you ranch here?" "I am a ranch hand at the Bryant Spread, about 5 miles north of town. I also do some breaking and training on the side, horses mostly, though I have worked with mules when the price is right." He took a sip of tea. "What about you? What brought you all the way from St. Louis to a mountain town in Colorado?" There it was. The question she had been dreading and expecting in equal measure. Violet stared into her teacup, choosing her words carefully. "I needed a fresh start. Sometimes a place can hold too many memories." "Bad memories?" She met his gaze. "Does it matter?" "I suppose not." Vance studied her, and she had the uncomfortable feeling he could see more than she wanted him to. "But for what it is worth, Ouray is a good place for fresh starts. Folks here do not ask too many questions about where you came from. They care more about what you do now." "That sounds ideal." Violet meant it. Anonymity, distance, the chance to be defined by her present rather than her past. The rain began to ease, the drumming on the roof fading to a steady patter. Daisy was fully asleep now, her head on Vance's shoulder. He shifted carefully, trying not to wake her. "I should get her home," he said quietly. "Thank you for the tea and for waiting with her." "Of course." Violet helped him with his coat, hyper-aware of how close they stood in the small space. He smelled like rain and leather and something else, something clean and masculine that made her pulse quicken. He lifted Daisy into his arms with practiced ease. She stirred but did not wake, settling against his chest with complete trust. The sight of it did something to Violet's carefully constructed defenses. This man who had lost his parents, who had taken on the responsibility of raising his young sister, who worked hard and treated everyone with quiet courtesy. He seemed too good to be true, which meant he probably was. "Good night, Miss Preston." "Good night, Vance." She used his first name without thinking, and saw surprise flicker across his face before he smiled. It transformed him, that smile, making him look younger and somehow more vulnerable. After they left, Violet sat alone in the schoolhouse for a long time, listening to the rain and trying to understand why her walls were starting to feel more like a prison than protection. Spring crept into the mountains gradually, each day bringing a little more warmth, a little more green. The snowpack receded up the peaks, and wildflowers began dotting the meadows. Violet's students grew more confident, their progress visible week by week. She felt settled now, comfortable in her role, respected in the community. But she could not stop noticing Vance. It started innocently enough. A comment from Mrs. Hartford about what a good man he was, how devoted to his sister. An invitation from one of the mothers to Sunday supper, where Vance happened to be a guest and spent the evening making everyone laugh with stories about stubborn horses and ranch mishaps. The way Daisy talked about him constantly, every other sentence beginning with "Vance says" or "Vance thinks." And then there were the small kindnesses. When the woodpile behind the schoolhouse ran low, Vance appeared one Saturday and spent the morning splitting logs. When one of the school benches broke, he fixed it without being asked. When Violet mentioned in passing that she would like to see more of the area, he offered to take her and Daisy on a ride up to some hot springs the following Sunday. She should have said no. Instead, she found herself saying yes. The day was perfect, warm enough for shirt sleeves, but with a crisp edge that reminded everyone winter was not far behind. Vance arrived at the hotel with 3 horses, including a gentle mare he said would be perfect for Violet. She had not ridden in years, but the skill came back quickly. They rode out of town at an easy pace, Daisy chattering between them. The hot springs were tucked into a canyon about an hour's ride from Ouray, a series of pools fed by thermal vents that sent steam rising into the cool air. The water was milky blue, surrounded by rocks and scrub pine. A few other groups had the same idea, but there was plenty of space. "We will let the horses rest while you two explore," Vance said, helping Daisy down from her pony. "Mind you do not go too close to the edge. Some of those pools are hot enough to boil an egg." Violet dismounted on her own, ignoring the hand he offered. She saw something flicker in his expression, but could not read it. Daisy grabbed her hand, pulling her toward the springs with infectious enthusiasm. "Look, Miss Preston, you can see all the way to the bottom." They spent an hour exploring, Daisy collecting interesting rocks, while Violet sat on a flat boulder and watched the steam rise. The mountain air was so clear, it almost hurt to breathe. She could see for miles, nothing but peaks and forest and sky so blue it looked painted. "Beautiful, is it not?" Vance settled onto the rock beside her, not quite close enough to touch. He had his hat off, his hair ruffled by the breeze. There was something about seeing him like this, relaxed and out of town, that made him seem more real somehow. "It is," Violet agreed. "I have never seen anything like it." "Does it make you miss St. Louis?" "No." The answer came immediately, emphatically. St. Louis was flat and dirty and crowded. This feels clean. "Clean," Vance repeated, as if testing the word. "That is a good way to put it. Sometimes I think that is what the mountains do. They strip away everything that does not matter, leave you with just the essentials." Violet looked at him curiously. "That is almost poetic." He laughed, a self-deprecating sound. "Do not let that get around. I have got a reputation to maintain." "As what?" "As a simple ranch hand who is better with horses than people." "I do not think you give yourself enough credit." The words escaped before Violet could stop them. She felt heat rise to her cheeks. "I mean, you are clearly very good with Daisy, and people in town speak highly of you." "Do they?" His eyes met hers, and there was something in them that made her breath catch. "What about you, Miss Preston? What do you think of me?" It was a bold question, asked in a gentle tone. Violet felt her defenses slam back into place. "I think you are a concerned brother who wants the best for his sister. That is all I need to think." She saw the slight flinch, quickly masked. Vance stood, brushing off his pants. "Right, of course. I will go check on the horses." He walked away, and Violet immediately regretted her sharp tone. But what was she supposed to say? That she found herself looking for him each morning? That his kindness made her want to trust again, even though she knew better? That sometimes, late at night, she lay awake thinking about what it might feel like to let someone past her walls? No, it was better this way, safer. On the ride back to town, the easy camaraderie of the morning had evaporated. Daisy, exhausted from the excursion, dozed in her saddle while Vance kept his attention on the trail. Violet rode in silence, berating herself and defending her reaction in equal measure. When they reached the hotel, she dismounted quickly. "Thank you for the outing. It was very educational." "Educational?" Vance's tone was flat. "Right? Daisy, I will see you tomorrow at school." She fled inside before either of them could respond, her heart hammering. In her room, she sank onto the bed and pressed her hands to her face. What was wrong with her? Vance had been nothing but kind, nothing but respectful. He had not pushed, had not demanded anything, and she had slapped him down as if he had propositioned her. But that was the problem, was it not? He had not done anything wrong, which meant if she let herself care, if she let herself trust, and he turned out to be like Matthew after all, it would destroy her, and she had worked too hard to put herself back together to risk shattering again. The next day at school, Daisy was quiet. She did her lessons without her usual enthusiasm, shooting Violet worried looks when she thought her teacher was not watching. Violet knew the child was confused, could sense the tension between the adults in her life. It made her feel guilty, which only compounded her frustration. When Vance came to collect Daisy that afternoon, he was polite but distant. "Afternoon, Miss Preston. Come on, Daisy. We need to get home." "Vance?" Violet found herself speaking before she could overthink it. "Could I have a word?" He hesitated, then nodded. "Daisy, wait outside for a minute." When the door closed behind the girl, silence stretched between them. Violet forced herself to meet his gaze. "I owe you an apology. I was rude yesterday, and you did not deserve it. You have been nothing but kind, and I repaid that with coldness." "You do not owe me anything," Vance said carefully. "I overstepped, asked a question that was too personal." "No, you did not. Or, rather, you did, but I should have handled it better." Violet twisted her hands together. "The truth is, I do not trust easily anymore. Someone I cared about in St. Louis proved to be very different from who I thought he was. He lied to me about important things, and when I found out, when I confronted him, he made it clear that he thought I was the problem, not him." She watched Vance's expression shift, understanding dawning. "He hurt you." "Not physically," Violet said quickly. "But yes, he hurt me, and I promised myself I would never be that vulnerable again." Vance was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Good." Violet blinked. "Good? Good that you do not trust easily anymore. Trust should always be earned, Miss Preston. No one gets to demand it just because they want it, and anyone worth trusting will understand that." He took a step closer, but not too close. "I am not asking you to trust me. I am just asking you not to judge me based on what some fool in St. Louis did. I am willing to earn it, if you are willing to give me the chance." Something in Violet's chest loosened. She had expected him to be offended, to dismiss her concerns, or try to convince her she was wrong. Instead, he had validated her caution while offering something she had not expected: patience. "I can do that," she heard herself say. "I can give you a chance." His smile was slow and genuine. "That is all I am asking." After he left, Violet sat at her desk for a long time, staring at the slate board without seeing it. She had just done something terrifying. She had opened a door she had sworn would stay locked. But instead of feeling panicked, she felt something else entirely: hope. Over the following weeks, Violet and Vance developed what could only be called a friendship. He still brought Daisy to school and picked her up each day, but now he would stay for a few minutes, talking about his day or asking about hers. Sometimes he brought her coffee from the hotel restaurant, the way she liked it with cream and sugar. Sometimes she saved interesting passages from books to share with him, watching his face light up as he listened. They discovered they were both voracious readers, though their access to books was limited. Violet began lending him volumes from her personal collection, and he treated them with such care she knew they were precious to him. They argued good-naturedly about whether Shakespeare or the American poets were superior. She insisted Shakespeare's understanding of human nature was unparalleled. He countered that Whitman captured something essential about freedom that the English playwright never could. "You are impossibly stubborn," Violet told him one afternoon, laughing despite herself. Says the woman who refused to admit I was right about the importance of practical education alongside classical learning. "I never said practical education was not important. I said it should not come at the expense of literature and the arts. And I said both have their place." Vance leaned against the doorframe, his eyes warm with amusement. "Face it, Miss Preston, we are going to have to agree to disagree on this one." "I suppose we are." Violet found herself smiling, really smiling, for the first time in longer than she could remember. "You are a worthy opponent, Mr. Blackwood." "Vance," he corrected gently. "I thought we were past formalities." "Vance," she repeated, and liked the way it felt on her tongue. "Then you should call me Violet." Something shifted in the air between them, a new intimacy acknowledged. "Violet," he said, testing it, "it suits you." "Because it is a flower name?" She tried to inject skepticism into her tone. "Because violets are tougher than they look, beautiful, but able to survive harsh conditions." His gaze held hers. "Seems fitting." Heat crept up her neck. Before she could respond, Daisy burst back into the schoolhouse, breaking the moment. "Vance, can we stop at the general store? Mrs. Miller said she got in penny candy." "I suppose we can manage that." Vance ruffled his sister's hair. "What do you say to Miss Preston?" "Thank you for teaching me today, Miss Preston." "You are welcome, Daisy. I will see you tomorrow." After they left, Violet pressed her fingers to her warm cheeks. She was blushing like a schoolgirl. And over what? A compliment about her name? But it was more than that. It was the way he looked at her, like she was someone worth seeing, someone worth knowing. It had been so long since anyone had made her feel that way. In May, the town organized a spring dance to celebrate the end of the harsh winter. It would be held in the church hall, with music provided by a group of miners who had formed a makeshift band. Violet had planned to skip it, but her students were so excited, and several parents specifically asked her to attend, that she finally agreed. She had one dress that could pass for a party dress, a deep green silk she had not worn since leaving St. Louis. It had been expensive, bought for occasions with Matthew that now felt like they belonged to someone else's life. She almost did not wear it, but then decided that was giving him too much power. It was just a dress. The church hall was already crowded when she arrived. Lanterns hung from the rafters, casting a warm glow over the assembled townspeople. The band was tuning up in the corner, fiddles and a guitar creating a cheerful cacophony. Children raced between the adults, their excitement palpable. "Miss Preston, you came!" Daisy appeared at her elbow, wearing a new dress that was clearly special occasion wear. "Do you like my dress? Vance bought it for me special." "It is beautiful," Violet said honestly. "You look very grown up." "Vance says I am growing like a weed." Daisy rolled her eyes. "I do not know why he says that. Weeds are not pretty." Violet laughed. "It is just an expression. It means you are growing quickly." "There you are." Vance materialized beside his sister, and Violet's breath caught. She had never seen him in anything but work clothes. Tonight he wore clean trousers, a pressed shirt, and a vest that brought out the green in his eyes. His hair was neatly combed, still damp from washing. He looked handsome in a way that made her pulse quicken. "Hello," she managed. "Hello yourself." His gaze moved over her, and she saw appreciation flicker in his expression. "That color suits you." "Thank you." Violet smoothed her skirt, suddenly self-conscious. "You clean up well yourself." "Well, I figured I should make an effort. Not every day we have a town dance." He glanced around the room, then back at her. "Would you save me a dance later? If you are inclined, that is." The question was casual, but she could see the hint of uncertainty in his eyes. He was giving her the choice, not assuming. "I think I could do that." His smile was worth the flutter of nerves in her stomach. The band struck up a lively reel, and the floor filled with dancers. Violet found herself swept into conversation with other teachers and parents, discussing curriculum and student progress. She kept catching glimpses of Vance across the room, dancing with Daisy or talking to other ranch hands. Each time their eyes met, something electric passed between them. Finally, as the band launched into a slower waltz, he appeared at her side. "I believe you promised me this dance." "I did." Violet let him lead her onto the floor, hyper-aware of his hand settling at her waist, her palm pressing against his. They had never been this close before. She could feel the warmth radiating from him, could see the faint stubble along his jaw where he had shaved earlier. "You are nervous," he observed quietly as they began to move. "How can you tell? You are holding yourself like you expect something to go wrong." Violet forced herself to relax slightly. "Maybe I do." "Fair enough." Vance guided her through the steps with surprising grace. "But for what it is worth, I am just as nervous as you are." "You are?" "Terrified," he admitted with a slight smile. "I have been thinking about dancing with you all week, worried I would step on your feet or say something stupid." "You have not done either of those things." "Night is still young." Violet found herself laughing and felt some of the tension ease from her shoulders. They moved together naturally, finding a rhythm that felt effortless. Other couples swirled around them, but Violet was aware only of Vance. The way he looked at her like she was the only person in the room, the gentle pressure of his hand guiding her, the way his thumb traced small circles on her waist, probably unconsciously. "I meant what I said," he said after a moment, "about earning trust. I know I have not known you long, but I care about you, Violet, more than I probably should, given how little time we have had. But I cannot seem to help it." Her breath caught. "Vance, you do not have to say anything," he continued. "I just wanted you to know, and I wanted to say that I am willing to wait. However long it takes, I am not going anywhere." Violet felt tears prick her eyes, which was ridiculous. She did not cry, had not cried since leaving St. Louis, but his words touched something deep inside her, some wounded place she had thought was past healing. "What if I am too broken?" The question escaped before she could stop it, raw and vulnerable. "What if I cannot be what you need?" Vance pulled her slightly closer, his voice low and fierce. "You are not broken. You are careful. There is a difference. And for the record, I do not need you to be anything but yourself." The song ended too soon. Vance stepped back, breaking the contact, but his eyes never left hers. "Thank you for the dance. Thank you for asking." They stood there for a moment, the noise of the hall fading around them. Then Daisy bounded over, full of requests for lemonade and more dancing, and the spell broke. But something had changed. Violet felt it in the way Vance watched her for the rest of the evening, in the way she found excuses to stay near him. The walls she had built so carefully were crumbling, and for the first time, she was not sure she wanted to stop them. When the dance ended and Vance offered to walk her back to the hotel, she accepted without hesitation. Daisy had fallen asleep at a nearby table, and he carried her with one arm while offering Violet the other. She took it, feeling the solid strength of him. The night was cool and clear, stars scattered across the sky in impossible profusion. Their footsteps echoed on the wooden walkway, a comfortable rhythm. At the hotel entrance, Vance paused. "I have been thinking," he said carefully. "There is a valley about 10 miles from here where the wildflowers are starting to bloom. I was planning to take Daisy on a picnic this Sunday. Would you like to come with us?" Violet knew what he was really asking. He was asking if she was ready to take another step forward, to spend more time together, to see where this could go. Every instinct screamed at her to say no, to protect herself. But there was a stronger instinct now, one that wanted to say yes to this man who had been so patient, so kind, so honest. "I would like that," she heard herself say. His smile was brilliant. "Good. I will pick you up at 9. She watched him walk away, Daisy sleeping peacefully in his arms. Then she went upstairs to her small room and stood at the window, looking out at the mountains silhouetted against the stars. Something was happening, something she had not planned for and could not control. She was falling for Vance Blackwood, and the most terrifying part was that she was not sure she wanted to stop. Sunday arrived with perfect weather, warm and breezy. Vance showed up precisely at 9 with a pack horse loaded with supplies. Violet wore her most practical dress and sturdy boots, her hair braided to keep it out of her face. Daisy greeted her with a hug, her excitement infectious. The ride to the valley took them through terrain that grew more spectacular with each mile. They passed through groves of aspen, the young leaves trembling in the breeze. They crossed crystal-clear streams where trout darted in the shallows. They climbed through rocky passes where the views stretched for miles. The valley, when they reached it, was breathtaking. It spread out before them like something from a painting, carpeted in wildflowers of every color imaginable: purple lupine, yellow balsam root, red paintbrush, white columbine. The air was thick with the scent of them, sweet and almost overwhelming. "Oh," Violet breathed. "This is beautiful." "Thought you might like it," Vance said, looking pleased with her reaction. "Not many people know about this place. It is too remote for most folks to bother with. But the flowers come back every year, just waiting." They found a spot near a creek to spread out their picnic blanket. Vance had packed an impressive spread: cold chicken, fresh bread, cheese, apples, and even a jar of lemonade kept cool in the stream. Daisy ate quickly and then ran off to pick flowers, her delighted laughter floating back to them. Violet and Vance sat side by side, comfortable in the silence. She found herself studying his profile, the strong line of his jaw, the faint lines around his eyes from squinting into the sun. He was handsome, yes, but it was more than that. There was a steadiness to him, a quiet strength that called to something deep inside her. "Can I ask you something?" she said finally. "Anything. Why are you not married?" The question had been bothering her for weeks. A man like Vance, kind and hard-working and responsible, should have been snapped up long ago. "Surely women in Ouray have noticed you." He laughed, a self-deprecating sound. "I have noticed them noticing, but the timing was never right. When I was younger, I was too focused on learning my trade, making enough money to maybe start my own place someday. Then my folks died, and Daisy became my priority. She needed stability, not some woman who might resent having a child thrust into her life." "That seems like a lot to sacrifice." "I do not see it as sacrifice." Vance turned to look at her. "Daisy is family. She comes first. Any woman who could not understand that is not someone I would want anyway. And now? What about now? Now I am talking to a beautiful, intelligent woman who seems to understand what matters." His gaze held hers. "Now I am hoping that maybe, if I am patient enough and lucky enough, she might give me a chance to prove I am worth the risk." Violet's heart hammered. "What if she is afraid?" "Then I will wait until she is less afraid, and I will show her every single day that she has nothing to fear from me." Vance reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she did not, he took her hand, his calloused fingers gentle on hers. "I know I am just a ranch hand. I do not have much to offer besides hard work and an honest heart. But what I have is yours, if you want it." She should pull away. She should protect herself. She should remember Matthew and the pain and the promises that turned to poison. But looking into Vance's eyes, she did not see Matthew. She saw someone completely different, someone real. "I want to trust you," she whispered. "I am just not sure I remember how." "Then we will figure it out together." He brought her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. One day at a time. No pressure, no expectations. Just us, learning each other. Violet felt something crack inside her chest, some last barrier giving way. "Okay," she said, her voice trembling. "Okay, yes, let's try." The smile he gave her was worth every risk. He pulled her closer, and she let him, resting her head on his shoulder as they watched Daisy dance through the flowers. The sun was warm on her face, the breeze carried the scent of summer coming, and for the first time in a year, Violet felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. They spent hours in that valley, talking about everything and nothing. Vance told her about his childhood, about learning to ride before he could properly walk, about his father's dream of having his own ranch someday. Violet told him about growing up in St. Louis, about falling in love with books as a girl, about deciding to become a teacher because she wanted to give children the gift of learning. She even told him about Matthew, the whole sorry story, how she had met him at a church social, how charming he had seemed, how he had courted her with poetry and promises, how she had believed him when he said he wanted to marry her, how close she had come to giving him everything, and how, when she had discovered the truth, he had blamed her for being naive, for reading too much into his intentions, for expecting more than he had ever meant to give. "He made me feel stupid," she said, staring at the flowers swaying in the breeze. "Like I had invented the whole relationship in my head, but I did not. He said he loved me. He talked about our future. And then, when I found out about his wife, he acted like I was crazy for being upset." Vance's jaw tightened. "He is the fool, not you. Any man who has you and throws it away deserves nothing but contempt." "He never really had me," Violet said softly. "I thought he did, but I was just a diversion, something to amuse him while he was away from home." "Then he is even more of a fool than I thought." Vance turned to face her fully. Listen to me, Violet. You are not naive for trusting someone who lied to you. You are not stupid for believing someone who deceived you. The only person who should feel ashamed is him. Do you understand? Tears pricked her eyes. I am trying to believe that. Then keep trying, and let me help. He cupped her face with one hand, his thumb brushing away a tear that had escaped. Let me show you what it looks like when a man means what he says. She leaned into his touch, feeling something inside her settle. I am scared. I know, but I am not going anywhere. When they finally packed up to head back to town, the sun was sinking toward the mountains. Daisy had a crown of wildflowers in her hair and a bouquet clutched in her small hands. She chattered the entire ride back, oblivious to the charged silence between the adults. At the hotel, Vance helped Violet dismount. His hands lingered on her waist, and she let them, not ready to break the connection yet. Thank you for today, she said. It was exactly what I needed. Can I see you again? I mean, besides when I bring Daisy to school? I would like that. Tomorrow evening, I could bring a picnic to the schoolhouse after you finish for the day. Nothing fancy, just a chance to talk. Violet smiled, feeling lighter than she had in months. That sounds perfect. She watched them ride away, then went upstairs to her room. For the first time since leaving St. Louis, she felt like the future held something besides just survival. She felt like it might hold joy. Spring turned to summer, and Ouray transformed. The last snow melted from even the highest peaks, revealing granite faces that glowed gold in the evening light. The meadows were thick with grass, and cattle dotted the hillsides. Miners worked the claims with renewed energy, hoping this would be the season they struck it rich. The town buzzed with activity and optimism. For Violet, those weeks were a revelation. Vance became a fixture in her life, their relationship deepening with each passing day. He brought her lunch at the schoolhouse, simple meals he had prepared himself that showed thoughtfulness in every detail. They took evening walks through town, talking until the stars came out. He introduced her to the ranching families he knew, and she was welcomed with a warmth that surprised her. Most importantly, he kept his word. He never pushed, never demanded more than she was ready to give. When she pulled back, he gave her space. When she reached out, he was there. He was teaching her, slowly but surely, that trust could be rebuilt. One Saturday in late June, Vance asked if she would like to see the ranch where he worked. Violet agreed immediately, curious to see this place that took up so much of his time. They rode out early in the morning, just the two of them. Daisy was spending the day with a school friend in town. The Bryant Ranch spread across a broad valley, with the main house and outbuildings clustered near a creek. Cattle grazed across hundreds of acres, tended by cowboys who looked weathered and competent. Vance led her to the corrals, where several horses watched their approach with interest. This is what I do most days, he explained, breaking the young ones to saddle, training them to work cattle. Some of these will be sold to other ranches. Some will stay here. Violet watched him work with a 2-year-old gelding, his movements patient and confident. The horse was skittish at first, but Vance never forced anything, just kept offering reassurance until the animal relaxed. It was fascinating to watch, the silent communication between man and horse. You are good at this, she said when he finally called a break. I like it. Horses are honest. They do not pretend to be something they are not. He glanced at her with a slight smile. Present company accepted, of course. I am honest, Violet protested. I know, that is one of the things I love about you. The word hung in the air between them. Love. He had said it so casually, but Violet felt its weight. Vance seemed to realize what he had said, color rising in his cheeks. I mean, not that I am saying I love you, or rather, I am, but not in a way that expects you to say it back. I just mean that I care about you deeply, and if that is love, then I suppose it is, and I am not sorry for feeling it, even though I probably should not have just blurted it out like that. He was rambling, which was so unlike him that Violet found herself laughing. Vance? Yes, breathe. He did, closing his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, he looked resigned. I am making a mess of this. No, you are not. Violet crossed to him, closing the distance between them. You are being honest, which is terrifying and wonderful in equal measure. Do you want me to take it back? She considered the question seriously. Did she? It would be safer if he did, but safe had stopped being her primary goal somewhere along the way. No, I do not want you to take it back. Even if you do not feel the same way, I did not say I do not feel the same way. Violet reached up, touching his face, feeling the warmth of his skin under her palm. I said it is terrifying. Those are different things. Hope flared in his eyes. So you might feel the same way? I might. She smiled, feeling braver than she had in years. In fact, I might feel exactly the same way. I might have been falling for you since the day you offered to help with my bags, and I was too scared to accept. Violet. Her name on his lips was a prayer and a promise. I love you, she said, testing the words, finding them true. I did not plan to. I fought it as hard as I could. But yes, I love you, Vance Blackwood. He kissed her then, finally, and it was everything she had imagined and nothing like she had feared. His lips were gentle but certain, his hands cradling her face like she was something precious. Violet kissed him back, pouring months of longing and fear and hope into the contact. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, she was smiling. Well, Vance said, his voice rough, that was worth waiting for. It was, Violet agreed, though now I am wondering why we waited so long. Because you needed time, and I needed to prove I was worth it. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, the tip of her nose. And also, because I am a patient man. I am starting to appreciate that about you. They spent the rest of the day at the ranch, and Vance introduced her to his boss and the other hands with obvious pride. Violet realized this was important to him, having her see this part of his life, having his world know she was part of it. She met it with grace, asking intelligent questions and charming even the most gruff cowboy. On the ride back to town, Vance said, I want to do this right, Violet. I want to court you properly, the way you deserve. I want people to know you were spoken for. I think after that kiss, we are already past courting, Violet said with amusement. Maybe so. But I still want to do it right. I want to take you to dinners and dances. I want to walk you home in the evenings. I want to make my intentions clear. And what exactly are your intentions? He looked at her seriously. To marry you, if you will have me, not tomorrow, not even next month, but someday, when you are ready. I want to build a life with you, Violet. I want to give Daisy siblings. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep with you every night. I want everything. Violet's breath caught. That is a lot of wanting. I know. Too much? No. She reached across and took his hand. Not too much, just right. The summer passed in a blur of joy. Violet had never been so happy, had never imagined she could be. Vance courted her with a determination that was both sweet and fierce. They became a fixture in town, the school teacher and the ranch hand who were clearly besotted with each other. Daisy was thrilled, already calling Violet her sister and making elaborate plans for their future together. Mrs. Hartford and the other townswomen approved, saying it was about time Vance found himself a good woman. Even the most cynical miners admitted they made a handsome couple. But beneath the happiness, Violet sometimes felt echoes of her old fear. What if something went wrong? What if she was making another mistake? What if Vance changed his mind or revealed some hidden flaw that destroyed everything? She tried to keep these thoughts to herself, not wanting to burden him with her insecurities. But Vance knew her too well. One evening in early August, they were walking by the creek that ran through town when he stopped and turned to her. What is wrong? Nothing, Violet said automatically. Violet. His tone was gentle but firm. Talk to me. She looked at the water rushing past, gathering her courage. I am scared that this is too good to be true, that something will happen to ruin it. Like what? I do not know. Anything. Everything? She turned to face him. What if you realize I am not who you think I am? What if I disappoint you? What if I am not enough? Vance pulled her into his arms, holding her close. Listen to me. You are more than enough. You are everything I never knew I needed, and nothing is going to ruin this unless we let it. You cannot promise that, Violet whispered against his chest. You are right. I cannot promise that nothing bad will ever happen. Life does not work that way. But I can promise that whatever happens, we will face it together. I can promise that my feelings for you are not going to change. And I can promise that I will never lie to you or hurt you deliberately. How can you be so sure? Because I know myself, and I know what I want. He pulled back enough to look at her. "Marry me, Violet." She stared at him. "What?" "Marry me. I know I said I would wait, and I will if you need more time. But I do not want you spending another day wondering if this is real. It is real. I am real. We are real. So marry me." "Vance, we have only known each other a few months. I do not care. I could know you for 10 years and not be more certain than I am right now." His eyes blazed with intensity. "I love you. I want to spend my life with you, and I do not see the point in waiting when we both know this is what we want." Violet felt tears streaming down her face. "You are absolutely insane." "Probably. Is that a yes?" She laughed through her tears. "Yes. Yes. It is a yes." He swept her up in his arms, spinning her around while she clung to his shoulders. When he set her down, he kissed her with a passion that left them both trembling. Violet kissed him back, pouring everything she felt into it. Joy and relief and love and hope. So much hope. "When?" she asked when they finally came up for air. "As soon as possible. Next month. That gives us time to plan, but not so much time that you can talk yourself out of it." "I am not going to talk myself out of it." Violet felt giddy, almost drunk with happiness. "I love you, Vance. I want this." "Good, because I'm not letting you go now." They were married on a perfect September morning, with most of the town in attendance. The ceremony took place in the church, with Daisy serving as flower girl and crying happy tears throughout. Violet wore a new dress, cream-colored silk, that Mrs. Hartford had helped her sew. Vance wore his best clothes, looking handsome and nervous and completely smitten. When the Reverend pronounced them husband and wife, Vance kissed her with such tenderness that several women in the congregation sighed audibly. Violet felt like she was floating as they walked back down the aisle, hand in hand, while everyone cheered. The reception was held at the hotel, with food and music and dancing that lasted well into the evening. Violet danced until her feet ached, accepting congratulations and well wishes from seemingly everyone in Ouray. But her eyes kept finding Vance across the room, and every time their gazes met, she felt a thrill run through her. Finally, as the party wound down, Vance swept her into one last waltz. They moved together in perfect harmony, and Violet rested her head against his shoulder, feeling completely at peace. "Happy?" he murmured, deliriously. "Good, because this is just the beginning." Vance had saved for months to rent them a small house on the edge of town. Nothing fancy but clean and sturdy with 2 bedrooms and a kitchen. He had furnished it simply but thoughtfully, knowing Violet would want to add her own touches. When he carried her over the threshold that night, Daisy already asleep in the 2nd bedroom, Violet felt tears sting her eyes again. "You did all this for us?" she whispered. "For you," Vance corrected. "I wanted you to have a real home, a place that is ours." Violet kissed him then, deeply and thoroughly, and they spent their wedding night learning each other in ways they had both been waiting for. Vance was gentle and patient, making sure she felt safe and cherished. Violet gave herself to him completely, holding nothing back. And when they finally fell asleep in each other's arms, she felt like all the pieces of her broken heart had finally knit back together. The following months were an adjustment, living together, building a life together, navigating the small conflicts and compromises that came with marriage. But Violet had never been happier. She continued teaching, though now she came home to a house filled with warmth and laughter. Vance worked hard at the ranch, saving every penny he could toward his dream of owning his own place someday. Daisy thrived with 2 parents who adored her. In December, Violet realized she was pregnant. She told Vance one evening after Daisy had gone to bed, watching his face transform with joy. "You are sure?" he asked, his hand moving to rest on her still flat stomach. "I am sure. The baby should come in late July." He kissed her with such reverence that Violet felt tears gather. "I am going to be a father." "You already are a father," she reminded him. "You have been raising Daisy for years." "That is different. This is ours, a piece of you and a piece of me." His eyes shone with emotion. "I did not think I could be any happier than I already was. I was wrong." The pregnancy was not easy. Violet was sick for months, exhausted and miserable. But Vance was endlessly patient, bringing her tea and crackers, rubbing her feet when they swelled, holding her hair when she was ill. He never complained, never made her feel like a burden. And slowly, as her body changed and the baby grew, Violet felt the last of her old fears fade away. This was real. This was lasting. Vance loved her, completely and unconditionally, and nothing was going to change that. Their son was born on a sweltering July afternoon in 1883. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Violet was certain she would not survive it. But Vance stayed by her side the entire time, holding her hand and murmuring encouragement, even when she screamed at him to leave. When the midwife finally placed the squalling infant in her arms, Violet felt a love so fierce it took her breath away. The baby was tiny and red-faced and perfect, with a shock of dark hair and eyes that would eventually turn the same creek water green as his father's. "What should we name him?" Vance asked, his voice thick with emotion as he stroked the baby's soft head. Violet looked at her husband, this man who had taught her to trust again, who had shown her what real love looked like. "Victor," she said. "His name is Victor." Victor Blackwood. Vance tested it. "I like it. Strong name for a strong boy." "He will need to be strong," Violet said with a tired smile. "With you for a father and me for a mother, he does not stand a chance of having an easy life. Maybe not easy, but definitely full of love." Daisy was 10 now, and she took to being a big sister with enthusiasm. She helped with feedings and diaper changes, sang to Victor when he cried, and declared herself his protector. Violet watched her stepdaughter with gratitude, amazed at how seamlessly they had all become a family. As Victor grew from infant to toddler, Violet continued teaching, though she cut back her hours. Vance had been promoted to foreman at the ranch, with a salary that allowed them to save more aggressively. They talked often about the future, about the land they would buy, the house they would build, the life they would create. In the spring of 1885, when Victor was almost 2, Vance came home one evening with news that made Violet's heart soar. "I found it," he said, his eyes alight with excitement. "The perfect piece of land, 200 acres, good water, enough grazing for a decent herd, and the owner is willing to sell for a price we can almost afford." "Almost?" Violet raised an eyebrow. "We are about $1,000 short, but I talked to the bank, and they are willing to loan us the difference if we can make the payments." He took her hands. "It is a risk, Violet. If we do this, we will be stretched thin for a while. But it is our chance to have something that is truly ours." Violet thought about the money she had saved from teaching, the small inheritance from her grandmother that she had kept separate. She had been holding onto it as security, a safety net in case everything fell apart. But looking at Vance's hopeful face, she realized she did not need that net anymore. She had something better. She had faith. "Use my savings," she said. "Add it to what we have. Let's do this." "Are you sure? That is your money." "No, it is our money. We are partners, remember?" She squeezed his hands. "I trust you, Vance. I trust us." His smile was worth more than any amount of money in the bank. They bought the land in June, and Vance immediately began planning. He would keep working at the Bryant Ranch for now, building their herd slowly while they lived in the house in town. In a year or two, when they had enough cattle and savings, he would build them a house on their own property. They would move there, start the ranch properly. It would be hard work, but it would be theirs. Violet loved watching his dream take shape. She helped where she could, learning about cattle and grazing rotation and water rights. She was still primarily focused on teaching and raising Victor, but she felt invested in their shared future in a way that thrilled her. In 1886, she gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Grace. This pregnancy was easier than the first, and the birth, while still painful, was mercifully quick. Grace had Violet's dark hair and Vance's green eyes, a combination that made her startlingly beautiful even as an infant. 2 children, Vance marveled, holding Grace while Victor clung to his leg. "How did I get so lucky?" "I ask myself the same question every day," Violet said, watching her family with contentment. "Though I would not exactly call 2 hours of labor luck." "Fair point." He grinned at her. "Thank you for all of this, for taking a chance on me, for building this life with me. Thank you for being worth the risk." By 1888, they were ready. Vance had built them a sturdy house on their land, nothing fancy but solid and well-made. They had 50 head of cattle, a few horses, and enough savings to see them through the lean times. In August, they moved out of the townhouse and onto their ranch, starting the next chapter of their lives. Daisy was 15 now, helping with the younger children and learning to manage a household. Victor was 5, curious and energetic, and already showing signs of his father's way with animals. Grace was 2, sweet-tempered and surprisingly stubborn, and Violet, at 30, felt like she had finally found the life she was meant to live. She had resigned from teaching, though she still gave private lessons to a few students who came out to the ranch. Most of her time was spent managing the household, raising the children, and helping Vance with the endless work of ranching. It was exhausting and demanding and occasionally frustrating. It was also deeply satisfying. One evening in late September, after the children were in bed, Violet and Vance sat on the porch of their house, watching the sun set behind the mountains. The air was cool with the promise of fall, and the last light painted everything gold. "Do you ever miss St. Louis?" Vance asked quietly. Violet considered the question. "Sometimes I miss the convenience of it, the libraries and shops and theaters. But no, I do not miss the city itself. That place holds nothing but bad memories." "No good ones at all?" "One," she admitted. "The day I decided to leave, the day I chose myself over staying somewhere that was killing me slowly." She leaned against him. "That decision brought me here, to you. So yes, one good memory." Vance wrapped his arm around her. "I am glad you came. I cannot imagine my life without you in it." "I cannot imagine my life without you either." Violet tilted her face up to kiss him. "You saved me, you know, from myself as much as anything else." "You saved yourself," Vance corrected. "I just gave you a reason to take the risk." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge one by one. Violet thought about the girl she had been when she arrived in Ouray 6 years ago, so broken and afraid. She barely recognized that version of herself now. That girl had thought trust was weakness, that opening your heart was asking for pain. She had been so wrong. Trust was not weakness, it was strength. It took courage to be vulnerable, to let someone see you fully. And when that trust was met with honor and integrity, when it was treasured the way Vance treasured hers, it became the foundation for something beautiful. Over the following years, the ranch thrived. They added to their herd gradually, building a reputation for quality cattle and fair dealing. Vance hired a few hands as the operation grew, young men who were eager to learn and willing to work hard. Violet managed the books in the household, proving to have a head for numbers that surprised even her. Daisy grew into a lovely young woman, eventually marrying a neighboring rancher's son and starting her own family nearby. Victor developed his father's skill with horses and his mother's love of learning, a combination that made him uniquely capable. Grace showed an artistic temperament, always drawing or singing, bringing beauty into even the most mundane tasks. In 1892, Violet gave birth to their 4th child, another son they named Samuel, and in 1895, their 5th and final child arrived, a daughter named Rose, who had her father's laugh and her mother's stubbornness. Through it all, through the hard times and the good, through sickness and health and every challenge that came their way, Violet and Vance had faced it together. Their love deepened with every passing year, becoming less about passion and more about partnership, about the quiet certainty that came from truly knowing another person. Sometimes, on warm summer evenings, when the children were playing in the yard and the cattle were lowing in the distance, Violet would look at Vance and feel overwhelmed with gratitude. This life they had built was not perfect. There were still hard days, still moments of doubt or frustration, but it was real and it was theirs, and it was founded on something unshakable, trust, earned slowly and honored daily. On their 20th wedding anniversary in 1903, Vance surprised Violet with a trip. They left the ranch in the capable hands of Victor, who was 20 now and more than ready for the responsibility, and rode back to Ouray. The town had grown over the years with new buildings and more people, but it still felt like home. They stayed at the Grand Hotel, the same place where Violet had spent her first nights in Colorado. They walked the familiar streets, visiting the schoolhouse where they had first really gotten to know each other. They had dinner at the restaurant where Vance used to bring her coffee. They danced in the church hall where he had first told her he was falling in love with her. 20 years, Violet said, as they swayed together to music from the same band that had played at their wedding. How is that possible? Time moves fast when you are happy, Vance said. At least, that is what they say. Are you happy? She looked up at him. Truly? Violet, I am more than happy. I am blessed. He pulled her closer. You gave me everything I ever wanted and things I did not even know to dream of. A family, a home, a purpose. You. I did not give you those things, Violet protested. We built them together. Even better. He kissed her forehead. Here is to 20 more years, and then 20 after that, and as many as we can manage beyond that. That is a lot of years. Not nearly enough. They stayed in Ouray for 3 days, rediscovering the town and each other. On their last evening, they rode out to the valley where Vance had first told her he loved her. It was early September, and while the wildflowers were not as profuse as in spring, there were still splashes of color among the grasses. "Do you remember the first time we came here?" Vance asked as they stood looking out over the valley. "I remember everything about that day." Violet smiled at the memory. "You were so nervous when you said you loved me. I thought you were going to pass out." "I nearly did. I was terrified you would run." "I almost did run," she admitted, "but I am glad I stayed." "So am I." Vance took her hand, their fingers intertwining with the ease of long practice. "I meant what I said that day, you know, about earning your trust. I know I have it now, but I still try to earn it every single day." "You do," Violet said softly, "and I hope I do the same for you." "You do. You always have." He turned to face her fully. "I love you, Violet Blackwood, more today than yesterday, less than tomorrow." She kissed him then, there in the valley where so much of their story had unfolded, and felt the same thrill she had felt 2 decades ago. Some things she had learned did not fade with time. Some things only grew stronger. As the sun set and they rode back toward town, Violet reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She had come to Ouray broken and afraid, certain that she would never trust anyone again. She had been wrong. Trust was not something you gave blindly or withheld permanently. It was something you offered carefully and accepted gratefully. It was a gift that had to be earned and honored. Vance had earned it 1,000 times over, and in doing so, he had given her back something she thought she had lost forever: the ability to hope, the courage to love, the faith that tomorrow could be better than yesterday. Years continued to pass, each one bringing new challenges and new joys. The ranch prospered beyond their wildest dreams, eventually spanning over 1,000 acres and employing 12 hands. Victor took over more and more of the day-to-day operations, showing a talent for leadership that made both his parents proud. Grace married a lawyer from Denver and moved to the city, though she visited often. Samuel became a veterinarian, the first in the family to attend university, and eventually opened a practice in Ouray. Rose, their youngest, inherited her mother's love of teaching and her father's way with people.